Terrific. So we have the meeting of the Middleton Public Works Committee. We have a quorum presence. We have Chair Myers, we have Don Knorr, Brandon Lang on Zoom, Dave Lorman and Kim Madden all present.
All right. As Chair of the Public Works Committee, I call the meeting to order. Agenda item number 1, minutes of 5/13/2024. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Hearing none, I accept the minutes as offered. Agenda item number 2, election of a vice chair. This is the meeting where we elect our vice chair. The vice chair serves and runs meetings when the chair is unable to do so. Are there any nominations for vice chair?
I will nominate Don.
Oh, thanks.
I will second that now.
Don, do you accept?
Sure. It's provided I get this email thing to work.
Yeah, that's a different topic.
Yeah.
So
Are there
nominations?
any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, there is one nomination which has been accepted by Don Knorr. The nomination period is closed. All in favor of Don, please say aye.
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 All opposed, hearing none. Thank you for continuing on, Don.
No problem.
All right, our next item on the agenda is to appoint a member of the Conservancy Lands Committee. Brandon, you've been serving on the Conservancy Lands Committee for Public Works. Are you willing to continue?
Yes, I would be.
All right. Thank you. Brendan Lang will be our member of the Conservancy Lands Committee. Next is to designate a member of the Pedestrian, Bicycle, and Transit Committee. Carrie requested to continue on in that role. I think she's been doing a great job. So I would ask the committee's support for my appointing her.
Actually, this one's.
Oh,
not
this
an
one. Oh,
appointment,
this one's not.
it's
Yeah.
an
Oh, yeah, you're right.
appointment.
This one's not an appointment.
It's either you or somebody that the committee
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
designates.
Okay, so
I'll move that Gary continue.
okay.
Since she volunteered, I read that even.
Yeah.
So I'll record that as a nomination.
I'll second. All in favor, please say aye.
Well, we should check if there
Yeah.
are others.
Are there other nominations? All right. Floor is now closed for nominations. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, hearing none. Thank you, Carrie, in absentia. Next is to recommend a member of the Water Resources Management and Stormwater Utility Commission. And that is also something where I believe we nominate and vote. Don, you've been serving in this role
In
or
swab, just swab.
in the swab?
Yeah, they haven't been.
One of the precursors. Yeah.
Well, the water resources does a heck of a lot more work, much longer meetings.
We'll see.
Yeah, I'll be happy to continue.
Right. I nominate Don.
Boy, so on his enthusiasm, I'll second that.
Did I mislead you?
Oh, you're now gonna, we're gonna vote on you.
Yeah. Don, do you accept?
Sure.
Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, the floor is now closed. All in favor of Don, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, hearing none. Thank you, Don.
Sure.
And now agenda item number 6, Old Creek Road and Pheasant Branch Road traffic issues, TC 166, TC 173, TC 175, TC 176. So I see some new faces at the meeting tonight. Thank you for coming. The way we typically do public comments in this meeting is if you're here to speak on this agenda item, let me know, say your full name. And public comments are recognized at the discretion of the chair. I've found this gives us more opportunity for back and forth constructive engagement. So that's the way I'm hoping to do things. Sean, if you could walk us through your memo.
Pretty sure I can. This is showing up on the screen for all. Is it at a scale that's legible, or do I need to zoom in?
I can read it.
All right, so representatives of, well, really of Old Creek Road, I think to start with, contacted me a couple of years ago with some interest in traffic calming on Old Creek Road. And we started in through the neighborhood traffic management program the following spring when we could do traffic counts. I finally got around to going through the data in July of 23, and it didn't meet the points requirement of our written policy. But since then, the program proposed has expanded to include portions of Pheasant Branch Road, which then garners some extra points because of being neighborhood wide instead of a really localized area. But in addition, it indicated through traffic count information that there are some prevalent speeding issues on portions of Pheasant Branch Road. So I guess in some respects, traffic volumes on Old Creek are somewhat down, but speeds are relatively unchanged. But what we found more is that speeds on Pheasant Branch Road, especially north of Old Creek Road, were really outliers. So normally we see stuff like 30 miles an hour, but we normally don't see the kind of points associated that we found on Pheasant Branch Road. So there are a couple of things going on with some of the data we collected, but also the neighborhood provided a memo summarizing what they've found in discussions with neighborhood group, a wider neighborhood group. And that's all in the packets here too. It goes in several, I guess I would qualify the emphasis on some interest in traffic calming measures, warning signs, studies of driveways and on-street parking, interest in traffic law enforcement, and improvements to high roads so that more traffic would be encouraged to drive on High Road instead of on Pheasant Branch Road. Both of those are classified as collector streets, although they're pretty different physical roadway environments, I would say. So that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Would anyone who's here as a member of the public like to speak at this time?
Yes, I would.
All right, you're recognized. Please say your full name.
My full name is Stephanie Moritz, and I reside at 3053 Old Creek Road.
Awesome, thank you. You're recognized.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us the time tonight to address this item on the agenda. As Sean said, it's been about a year and a half in the making. And we did expand the scope of the project area. And I think that was really enlightening that we did. It pulled in a larger neighborhood group. And we were able to listen to neighbors other than Old Creek neighbors. And found out that there are more issues involved than just on Old Creek. So I want to start by thanking the city staff because they've been very cooperative in doing the traffic counts on Old Creek and Pheasant Branch and recently updated them this spring. And I personally found it interesting that even over just a year's period, we did see increases in the numbers of vehicles traveling on Pheasant Branch Road. And I think we can expect this to increase further as the housing developments are developed to the north, specifically Red Tail Ridge. So that's definitely on our radar. And we feel that as a neighborhood, we want to be proactive instead of reactive. And since we have an identified problem, get measures in place now rather than waiting any longer. So that's kind of what's driving us. As you saw in your packets, the NTMP summary sheet clearly shows that we do qualify for traffic calming because the average of the 5 areas that were surveyed in the traffic counts is 35, which is 15 points over the threshold, the minimum required for traffic calming under the NTMP process. We strongly feel that we would like to see this approached on a neighborhood basis, not piecemeal. So we feel that there is more merit in looking at the whole picture and going with that 35 as opposed to saying, well, you know, this stretch has 20, this has 16, this has 62. Old Creek and Pheasant Branch roads flow into one another. It really doesn't make sense to separate them out in terms of, for example, deciding where speed humps should go, in our opinion. We think that speeding is a problem on the whole stretch of road. Yes, it shows up in the traffic measurements on specific points, but speeding is a problem on both roads. So if we start talking about speed humps as a potential measure for traffic calming, for example, we would like to see it examined on both roads, not just Pheasant Branch Road. We're mindful of the budgetary impact that some of these traffic calming measures have. If we talk about speed humps, if we talk about diverters, for example, at the intersection of Century Avenue and Oak Creek Road, we have a problem in that there are no left turn signs posted, but many motorists do not observe them. They've been up for a long enough time now that they've been able to get used to the idea. But in my own unofficial surveys, over 50% of the drivers that go southbound are still turning left, unfortunately. So that's one thing that we would like the city to take a look at, is a pork chop diverter at that intersection. And obviously there's a price tag for that. So in our further discussions, assuming that this committee would give the okay to go forward and for our neighborhood to work with the city, we're very open to a phased approach, to a prioritized approach, and keeping in mind that obviously there are budget issues and we do recognize that. As far as prioritizing, I would say that our priorities, we have that long laundry list, which you saw in your packet. Not all of that is traffic calming per se. Some of it is enforcement issues, but there's a lot to consider. There are a lot of things that came up in our meetings. But I think our priorities would be, number one, speed humps to control the traffic speeds, the pork chop diverter at Century and Old Creek. And we need to take a look at the Frank Lloyd Wright Pheasant Branch Road intersection. It's problematic for a lot of reasons, and we spent a lot of time talking about it, and I won't go into detail about it now. But if you have questions about that intersection and what our concerns are, we can certainly go into that further. And my neighbor, Joan Heitman here, lives at Middleton Glen, and she really knows a lot of the problems associated with that intersection. I think finally, I would mention that, we're dealing with a conservation corridor. with Pheasant Branch Road. It's not like a lot of other streets in the city. Pheasant Branch Conservancy is really a jewel in the crown of Middleton. And those of us that live nearby, and I think a lot of the users of Pheasant Branch would agree that we want to keep the character of the Conservancy rural as much as possible. Yes, we realize that traffic goes through there, but this is an area that is sensitive to wildlife. It's used by pedestrians, bicyclists. We want this to be a very controlled roadway in terms of the speed and volume. And this is another reason why we feel that as much as we can shift the traffic volume over to High Road, it would be a much more appropriate street to handle the types of traffic that we may foresee in the future. So I would just ask that that be kept in mind as well. I think those are the only comments I have. I don't know if my fellow committee members wish to say anything.
Well,
Please say your first and last name.
my name is Joan Heitman. I live at 6720 Century Avenue, which is Middleton Glen. I think all of us have noticed all over the city problems emerging. I personally in the last 5 years. And I think we could be an example of what to do in other situations that are out there that are going to come up for review.
I'm Judy Nystrom. I live at 3055 Old Creek Road, which is the unit closest to the intersection.
Yeah.
Of Old Creek and Pheasant Branch. And I want to give you one example of why I think the problems on Old Creek and Pheasant Branch are very closely related. 2 weeks ago, we were outside on our driveway talking to neighbors, and a car came up Old Creek going too fast. And it went right through the intersection without stopping at the stop sign. And there was a pedestrian in the middle of that intersection. And she was very startled and she yelled out, "Hey," very loudly. And the car proceeded speeding down Pheasant Branch Road. So it's a continuum. They just don't pay attention to the traffic signs that are there in either north or south direction. So, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any comments from people on Zoom? Lisa, you are recognized.
Thank you. Lisa Hanairo, District 6 Alder. I live at 6701 Whittlesey Road, which is right down the street from Pheasant Branch Road. And I'm here because I want to support Joan from my district and the other representatives of the committee that's been working on this. I think this is a great example of a neighborhood traffic management program that's proposed. And I am asking the Public Works Committee to consider implementing as many of the requests as we can. Can't do it all at once financially. Let's try to figure out which ones make the most sense and bring the most benefit and work those into our budgets going forward. I personally think the construction of a pork chop island is probably the only way to stop people from turning left off of Old Creek Road onto Century. I see it happen all the time. I thought for a second maybe I was the person who yelled "hey" at the car that was speeding through the intersection of Old Creek and Pheasant Branch, because I have had to do that. I was going to ask, in addition to the blind driveway signs, which are obviously safety related, maybe another traffic calming option could be to add some wildlife crossing signs, because I'm always astonished that we don't have more signs. People who live around here know, but if you're following Google Maps and it tells you to go down Pheasant Branch Road, you might not be aware that there are turkeys lurking on the side of the road, and deer, and today I saw a muskrat. So these are these are, yeah, this is a good place to have some of that. And then I noticed the suggestion about a raised crosswalk on Pheasant Branch Road at Gaylord Nelson Road. I don't know if I don't know if the traffic engineering would say that's an appropriate place for such a crosswalk. I think it would be great if we could put one there. At the very least, I'm going to stick around at this meeting to advocate for putting the rectangular rapid flashing beacon at Gaylord Nelson and Pheasant Branch Road, because I think that I put the word out to my constituents in District 6 to find out who had recommendations for where one of those should go. And I only heard back from 4 or 5 people, but everybody was like, oh, definitely Gaylord Nelson, because it's used by the Middleton Hills folks, but also others. So construction of a raised crosswalk would be great, but if not, a rapid flashing beacon would be good too. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Are there,
I have one comment on the crosswalk. I agree with her fully, and there's now limited parking for Pheasant Branch. A lot of people do park in Middleton Hills. In fact, we've had a couple of complaints of people using the alleys as thoroughfares to turn around, because we have on-site street parking. And, you know, it's nothing much we can do about it. We said, put up children playing signs, but, you know, it's for no thoroughfare signs, but people won't listen or read those either. If they don't see stop signs,
Right.
they're not going to see anything else, but, yeah.
Alder Lorman, I think you also had your hand raised.
Sure. Yeah, thanks much. I did a little bit of history digging back through email on this, and I actually found communications starting with my predecessor, going back to 2021, for the starting with Old Creek Road area. So this has clearly been on the radar for a couple alder terms at this point. In terms of supporting recommended measures, Steph Morris put it best. I don't need to repeat what she said. I fully support all of her measures. And what I really like the idea of is looking at it from a very large neighborhood perspective. So taking in all the interested parties that are there. The members of the Conservancy condominiums did send a follow-up email late Friday, but it should.
With a summary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that didn't make it into this packet. But it should be recognized very much so in terms of, you know, public input, because they are one of the significant voices involved in this. And in summary of their many points, which is, well, 3 pages here. In summary, it boils down to the members of the Conservative condominiums also support traffic calming measures along that corridor as well. I look at it from a perspective of, I defer to the expert of city staff and engineering to look at this, make recommendations to us as well. I don't claim to be an engineer in any way whatsoever, but I understand the data supports that we do something. And certainly as a representative of constituents of my district, it's paramount that their voice be heard, and I support it.
Okay. Kevin, you can unmute yourself. You're recognized.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? I'm not sure if I'm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to add to Alder Anaro's statement. So I've been back in the Conservancy for about 15 years photographing wildlife, and I've seen quite a few changes, especially since COVID, where there's significantly more people using the Conservancy, whether they're in cars or on bicycles or walking. and just the increased traffic due to higher density population in the area. And we have had significantly more federally protected wildlife hit and injured and killed, including bald eagles, other birds of prey such as barred owls and great horned owls. We recently released 5 weeks ago 2 barred owls back into the conservancy that were injured and hit on Pheasant Branch Road. I was closely involved with their rehab and contributing to the cost of that, and we released those barred owls back to the Pheasant Branch Conservancy. So there is an increase. So now we're not dealing with just it's a convenience and people are driving too fast, but there's a risk to both humans and federally protected wildlife, including deer and turkeys and other animals. So there's really been a significant change, and we really haven't adapted our practices or increased enforcement back in that corridor. So it has gotten to this critical stage where these very rare animals are being hit and killed, and so we need to do something. And I just wanted to add to some of the comments tonight and just to make that a reality. I have photos of the release, and it's really been great that we could save some of these animals, but it is a significant issue that we need to address. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so before we go any further, this committee doesn't really have the ability to do anything in terms of speeding enforcement. So I think that we should refer that to the Public Safety Committee for their consideration, since that appears to be a widespread problem in the neighborhood based both on our traffic studies where we did counts and speeds, as well as from the neighborhood feedback that we've gotten. So I would move to refer enforcement concerns along this corridor, both along Pheasant Branch Road and Old Creek Road to the Public Safety Committee.
I don't know if you have to move that. It's more or less a suggestion.
I'd like our committee to formally send it to them as a concern.
Oh, okay. Well, then I'll second it if it's a motion.
So with that, would we need to, I would imagine would just provide them with data that Sean has already
Yeah.
gathered, and it would just say, okay, here's the speeding and here's the,
Yeah, and the comments raised by
Okay.
neighbors as well.
so it'll be a packaged up, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Great. All those in favor of sending a packet of enforcement concerns to the Public Safety Committee, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, hearing none. All right, that motion carries. Thanks, everyone. Now let's move on to the other measures that this committee can do something about.
Budgeted.
Yeah.
What do we have that we can actually do this year financially? Anything?
Well, things like signs are in an operating budget.
Yeah.
So where we put them or which ones we replace is really a staff call.
Okay.
So there are some that we have to meet federal retro reflectivity requirements. So they're programmed, things like stop signs. We want, or I should say, we don't want someone to say, gee, that didn't show up in my headlights, or I couldn't see that or make it out, right? But we have a pretty wide discretion on signs. So that we have a lot of flexibility on.
Flashing stop signs.
Not flashing stop signs, but
Seen
retro
those.
reflective stop
Yeah, I've
signs.
seen flashing ones also.
I have seen them. We don't have
We
any.
don't have any.
Yeah.
Is that something we could look into? I mean, I hate to say it, she's right with Frank Lloyd Wright and Pheasant Branch. That intersection is awful and nobody
Yeah.
stops there. It's just as bad as Donna and Park.
Yeah.
Same thing.
And that becomes part of the issue is
Yeah.
our goal has been to try to make them visible.
Yeah.
We can't make a driver
Stop.
see something and recognize something or care about something. We can't do that. It's beyond our capability, but we can say it's there, it's visible, it's retroreflective. You don't have any excuse for not seeing it and acting on it. You just chose not to.
Sure.
Right? And the same thing could be said for a flashing stop sign. Now, when it's a rare thing, I think a case could be made that, gosh, that's unique. It draws attention. And it begs the question, well, which ones should not be flashing stop signs? Because people coast through lots of stop signs or slow down and then go, or sometimes skip it entirely. And so we would need, I think, then some sort of policy to say, under these conditions, we'll put in flashing stop signs, or every stop sign will be a flashing stop sign. Because right now, staff has no way to evaluate those calls. But I can tell you from my experience with rolling out the RRFBs, it generates a fair amount of interest to say, well, how come I don't have one of those at this intersection? You know, and I think it's a fair question. If somebody sees one, they're gonna say, I think we need one here too.
So signage is an easy deal. How about the crosswalk that we were talking about, Gaylord Nelson and Pheasant Branch with the the flashing lights and the push buttons, et cetera. There, I don't know if those are all solar, aren't they?
We try for solar whenever we can.
That's a pretty open intersection on one side.
Yeah, few cases we've had to get metered power or put up a remote solar panel and then wire it separately. All those things that tend to cost money, we have to put in a budget request for, because it's beyond the capability of our operating budget to just let staff have discretion of what to do and where.
Sure.
The pork chop on, pork chop on Century, that's a county road.
Century is a county road,
Yeah.
but Old Creek is where the pork chop would be.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
yeah,
And I know we discussed that when Stagecoach was built, because it was part of the TIA that, hey, this might be a suggestion that we went through. And I think financially, we just said no at this point. Let's just do signage.
Yeah, exactly. And if it doesn't work and if the neighborhood supports it, I don't have anything against it. It wouldn't be the first pork chop we've got.
No. And is that something we could budget for next year at this point?
Yeah, typically, if we're doing traffic calming kinds of stuff, we follow the program. And the program says we'll have a neighborhood, because the intention of the neighborhood traffic management program is it's driven by the neighborhood with staff support, it's driven by staff and with neighborhood concurrence. So we let the neighborhood have a workshop and from the ground up propose something that they think they'll agree to, and then there's a vote. And it either gets voted up or voted down. It might get revised and revoted. But we try not to budget for those things until we know what we're doing.
Sure.
So traffic calming is kind of its own process thing. A pork chop isn't really traffic calming as much as it is
Control.
it's sort of quasi control. It's saying, we told you, no left turns, and it turns out what we meant was no left turns.
Well, between that and maybe putting an island in the middle of the lane when they repave it,
Yeah,
so that they can't, but then the
that's
width
the
of the
other way to
road
go.
isn't there for that.
Exactly. So I would expect a lot of people on Century Avenue to drive into that.
Yeah.
yeah. That stretch.
So that the county would probably decline,
Mhm.
just say no, thank you. But it's an idea. So that kind of thing. In terms of looking at an intersection or looking at on-street parking or looking at driveway site distances, that doesn't cost money. So that's something that really just relies upon the availability of staff time. which has been thin. But it doesn't require any special action by a committee or by, through budgeting process. It's just a matter of, we try to get to these things when we can get to these things.
Sure.
Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add? Okay, so I think there was a policy question that we do need to consider, which is just since it seems like the committee wants to move forward with the neighborhood traffic management process, which is to make sure that we include Old Creek in that process, since what we've discussed with the pork chop and the concern about people just no longer being able to really go down Pheasant Branch the way they were going down Pheasant Branch, and just diverting their speed over to Old Creek if we put in the speed humps and other traffic control measures. So I think we should consider the neighborhood holistically and include Old Creek Road in this process, in spite of it only scoring 16 points.
Do you mean traffic calming on Old Creek Road, or specifically
In the
the diverter as if it's traffic calming?
I think the diverter is more turning left at that intersection. It's just flat out dangerous.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a bad idea.
Yeah, it's,
Most times of
Well,
day,
they-
sometimes of day, it's not a.
I know, yeah. They-
I mean, I'm
U-turns
on
are
it,
front foot right too,
monitor it
you know.
as much as I can. Constantly turning left off Creek onto Century.
Yeah.
I mean, signs are there, but they're not effective enough.
And I could go either way with that. I mean, the one thing with the traffic calming program, if we want to include the diverter in the traffic calming program, and I'm not saying let's not, but it then is subject to a vote. And if it's an important safety issue from a traffic control perspective, I don't know that we need to make it subject to the neighborhood committee workshop or a vote. The committee itself can deal with things like that.
Yeah.
Discussion, design, and budgeting perspective.
I think if the neighborhood voted against the lamb chop, it would be because they wanted to turn left.
Well, and the flip side is when we put together a vote package, it's an all or nothing thing.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I
people
know.
will say yes to this, but no.
Yeah, I know. So can we keep that separate then? Lamb chops?
We can.
okay, we
Yeah,
can keep that
easily,
yeah.
because it's not classically traffic calming as much as
Control.
mandating knock it off. So.
So I got a question. I think it would be helpful if we had some costs, like estimated costs that were attached to each one of these items that the working group put together. And then Sean, maybe from engineering staff, like an approximate budget that we can work off of, maybe not getting it, if we can't do it all in 1 year, maybe spread it out over a couple of years. Or maybe you just know historically what kind of money we can pull together for this for next year to get in the budget. I mean, do you think we can cover everything on this list that has a cost associated with it?
Well, that's always up to number one, the neighborhood voters, the affected area voters, to say
Right.
either they do or don't support the package. So that might go a couple iterations, but once they settle on something and we then can put together a cost for it, it's really up to the will of the, Finance and Personnel Committee and Common Council to set the budget. So the Public Works Committee would put in a budget request. But it's not like we have a limit on budget requests. It's really up to the council to juggle that at the end of the day.
Sean, who puts together the vote form, the document?
That's the result of the neighborhood workshop.
Correct. And they've been going through this. Are you saying they still need another workshop to do this or?
Well, yeah, city staff has not been involved in these discussions to
Okay.
date. So the workshop is basically an invitation to come, and I don't really care where, but to come to a centralized area so we can hash through this stuff that I think many of the neighbors already did.
Mhm.
But we want to be sure that everybody who gets a vote is invited. And at the end of that workshop, ideally, there will be a proposal. And then I'll try to draft it up and send it out.
Okay.
Again, to everybody who gets a vote.
Do you have any thoughts in terms of along the lines? I mean, there's a big list of stuff here. So we're already eliminating enforcement. That's gonna go to public safety.
Public safety, yes.
And so now we get to the, call it the physical stuff, the build, construct or whatever. And so we've got, pork chop, speed bumps, raised crosswalk, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But there's more. So, like I'm looking for help to help kind of narrow it and say, these are really good things. Let's start here. And then when it's presented to the neighbor, formally to the neighborhood committee group, rank order or just, help people, or is that not a good idea?
Yeah, I think as much as we can, we want it to come from the neighborhood group.
We don't want to drive them by saying, well, we think this is
Yeah.
good. We want them to say, tell us, no, we think a pork chop is good, but a blah, blah, blah is bad, or a blah, blah, blah is good. And, oh, okay.
Yeah, and ideally, I mean, there's a neighborhood driving committee to some degree, right? That reports out to the more full neighborhood itself. And if we could have sort of a pre-meeting to say, yeah, this seems, applicable, or this seems probably, not like a good idea. That can help steer some of that conversation within bounds, without saying, oh, the city engineer says we ought to do this, right? Because
giving you
it's
too
coming
much
from the
credit.
top down.
Just giving you too much credit.
Really, what started our neighborhood traffic management program was that we started into this by hiring as a city, hiring a consultant who came up with a plan and implemented it. And for the most part, there was opposition after it was built. Right, and rightly so, because the neighbors felt like, well, they had no real meaningful input or say in all of this stuff, right? And traffic calm, speed humps are a perfect example. People tend to love these things or hate these things. They're not usually on the fence about these things. And so that's what started the neighborhood traffic management program anyway, is to say, no, let's work with the neighbors, but more listening than demanding or dictating or driving. So that's why we do a workshop.
Thank you.
What would the timeline for that workshop be?
That's all in the policy, but its biggest hurdle, well, it has two big hurdles. One is that it can be iterative, so it can go in something of a loop. We don't often have one neighborhood workshop and everyone walks away and says, yeah, that's what we ought to send out for a vote. Sometimes, what's that?
It might happen here because of all
It
the
could.
preliminary work that they've done. Yeah.
Exactly, that could happen. So that would be time savings. The other thing that's a problem is staff time, right? So it just plain takes some to say, let's have a neighborhood workshop. Let's staff the neighborhood workshop. Let's draw up concepts. Let's get the votes physically out. Let's get all the neighbor addresses pulled together. It just all takes time.
So maybe one of the things we can provide some direction for tonight, because really we have Oak Creek residents, we have Middleton Glen residents. And the only people who aren't here are service condominium representatives. And maybe from Alder Nairo's district, I guess it could be neighbors, like the backyard of people that face Pheasant Branch, probably. Yes or no, Alder Nairo, hand is
Yeah,
up.
Lisa, your hand's up.
Yeah, that's actually why my hand is up, because I'm wondering who are the neighbors who will have a chance to vote? Because obviously Pheasant Branch Road affects, what happens to Pheasant Branch Road will affect Middleton Hills. But that's a lot of votes, and I'm not sure, based on other voting things that have happened, Don may have better intel. But I'm wondering if that's reasonable to expect that Middleton Hills will everyone in Middleton Hills will have a chance to vote on this, or is it limited to so many feet, 200 feet, 100 feet from the roadway?
Yeah, I don't think the people on Ramsey Road care about Pheasant Branch Road.
Some probably do more than others,
Yeah,
but
I
it's
mean-
gonna be, that's one of those art questions more than a science question, unfortunately, and our policy doesn't give really clear direction on that, which probably is good, but it calls this the affected area. Those are the folks that vote. Now, obviously, people drive on this road that live in Wanakee. They don't get to vote. People on the west side of Middleton Hills probably drive on this road. I drive on this road.
Yeah.
I don't get a
Right,
vote.
yeah.
But where exactly we draw that line is something that I would try to lay out based on who's probably most directly affected and most often affected, and then bring that to the committee to say, does this seem right? And it's a little bit touchy-feely, but there is no black and white answer. It's not a 200-foot or 300-foot kind of thing.
When I look at this, it would, the backyard, I mean, you've got the backyard of the residents on Prairie Glade Road. But
Front yards on Pheasant Branch further to the north.
they don't, it's interesting, they don't have an entrance or exit onto Pheasant Branch.
Exactly.
And so,
Right. no,
Yeah,
a couple
be-
do. A
so
couple of
people-
them do. Yeah, there's a couple on there.
I'm talking about a driveway entrance.
There's a couple driveways on Pheasant Branch.
But-
They're actually not
Not on
by
Prairie.
definition Middleton Hills.
Yeah.
Right.
But
The
they're
precursor.
on Pheasant Branch.
Yep, I see them down here
Yeah,
further, more
yeah.
towards,
In the north, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so, yeah, it's more,
Two, I think,
yeah, it's down
maybe
towards
at most.
Gaylord Nelson
Yeah.
area.
So just
So-
being close doesn't mean you'll drive there very often.
No, I think the people that have driveways on it and voting history in Middleton Hills, unless you're trying to put up an urban art piece, is atrocious,
Subtle, Don.
Nobody votes. I'm serious. So we have our annual meeting the 20th, and if 40 people show up, we'll be lucky.
Oh,
So I mean, I'm just saying, okay, then. Would it be at Alder Hanairo's discretion to say, well, okay, my constituents between Gaylord Nelson and. This block here and down to Whittlesley, houses that align. I mean, there's,
in the past, we've left that as a committee decision. So I try to propose something that I think is reasonable, and then the committee either modifies it
committee?
or adopts it. Yes, this committee.
So we could add homes or delete homes.
Correct. Yep,
We did the same thing with High Point Road at the last.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, we had that discussion.
So what do you need from us tonight to move forward?
Well, I think one thing that I picked up on that Brandon suggested was reviewing the list of requests with itemized rough cost estimate, right? I think I'm hearing coalescence that you would like to encourage the neighborhood to move forward in the neighborhood traffic management process. And I understand the interest in timeline.
Yeah.
And I'm not dodging the question, but I'm not answering the question because it depends in part on staff time.
Yeah, and staff time was why I was curious if you had some idea of what timeline might be or what we could do to help you.
I don't. I mean, North High Point Road, I managed to fit in, but it's a pretty simple case study of traffic calming. This one's a little more complicated just because it's more expansive. But not a lot more complicated. So I don't know. We might be able to get this something together by fall, maybe into winter. Hard to say.
Okay. Then the other question I have is what would the cost of a temporary pork chop?
I wouldn't even try a temporary.
You wouldn't, okay, yeah.
We do it or we don't do it, but we do it in concrete when we do it.
How about those lovely little posts stick up, put them on the center line, down through there, get the.
Yeah, but how often do you want to set them up there?
I understand, but I mean, I think if they're there though, more people would not make a left.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to drive through those posts.
Yeah.
I used to say about those signs we put out in the middle of the road that say there's a pedestrian crossing here and yield to pedestrians, but they get hit quite a bit too.
Okay, never mind.
They wouldn't survive winter, that's for sure.
No.
I wouldn't expect it.
Anything,
So do you need a motion from us to proceed, have everyone proceed with this approach, or do you want to just come back to us?
The emotion, I'm hearing consensus that
Okay.
way.
Okay.
So,
No, works for me.
so you don't need direct, you're just gonna take action without a vote. You're just gonna act on it and that's it.
yeah, well, and really the neighborhood committee is gonna continue following the process. So we're at, I don't know where we're at, step E, give or take. Zoom up, down a little bit. I only copied a little piece of it, but. Is after we had collected data, say, is there or is there not a problem? And that's kind of where we're at right now. So that's what the points is all about. And then there's more process I just didn't include in this. Get on with step F.
So Sean, should I just communicate with you about next steps?
Yeah,
Handle.
yeah, why don't we do? You've been really good about that.
Sounds.
Is there any other discussion? Any other discussion? Any other discussion? All right, hearing none. We are going to move on to the next item on our agenda, which is Century Avenue, Century/Allen, Century/County Highway Q and Lake Street traffic intersection configuration agreement for design, engineering, and bid services. Thank you, everyone who joined and all of the work that you put into the last agenda item ahead of this meeting.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
hearing our concerns.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have Sean Alsrud online with us this evening, and he has picked up and bravely decided to be the project manager for this. It's sort of a three-part project, which has then different cost shares with the county highways. So one is doing design work at Century Avenue and Highway Q. Because we've got some conduits that have to get replaced and there's an awful lot of other utilities already in that intersection. For the most part, we want the traffic signals to work while we're putting the new conduits in. The old ones are just wrecked. And the real goal was, well, let's get new traffic signal equipment in there. But without new conduits, we can't. So part of it is let's hire somebody then to lay out new conduits for us. Mostly because we also need somebody to design and bid Century Avenue at Allen Boulevard as an intersection. The real guts of that project is trying to realign the pedestrian crosswalks and simplify that, which is sort of a zigzag, maneuver right now. And we're trying to streamline that, which helps pedestrians, but it also helps drivers see the pedestrians. And so we have a very rough concept of what that should include, but we need that designed and laid out so that it can be bid. And then the third part of that project really is trying to take a look, a deeper dive into the warrants of potential signalization at Allen Boulevard, Lake Street, which kind of came to light as one of the ideas to look into further when the Lake 61 apartments got built. But since it's so close to Century and Allen, and since we want to update that traffic controller, first we need to look at, is this warranted down at Lake Street? And if so, how would it interrelate to Century and Allen? So these three projects were all packaged into one budget request, which is funded. Just because of the timing of that, the county's budgeting is off by a little bit, but they have at the staff level agreed to reimburse the city for their share of our costs. The timing of those reimbursements may be a little bit off, but that's not a huge concern for the city compared to getting it done. But the prorated share of each of these sub-projects is a little bit different.
Would it entail the next signal light down too on Allen going to the south?
That one's far enough away that it can run
You're sure?
independently.
Okay,
Yeah,
just checking, because it is close.
yeah, but it's at least far enough.
Okay.
I don't know if it's a full quarter mile, but it's in that ballpark.
Okay.
And so then this has to be coordinated with the whole 2029 redo project.
Yeah, well, when we sat down, it was a 2026
Right.
refocusing project on Century Avenue. It's very recent that it became a 2029 project. So the good news is we have a little bit of breathing room here.
Yeah.
But still, it's in our budget now, so we do want to try to get it done.
Sure.
I see.
And then if we're ahead of 2029, fine, that's not a bad thing. So anyway, so those are the three projects. There's county coordination that has to be done. There are different pieces that Sean will have to track by percentage. So it gets a little bit complicated from those perspectives, but they do all tie together nicely, which is handy. So anyway, so Sean sent out requests for proposals. We did get 2 proposals back in. They're each a little bit different in focus. I think either company could do a good job. I think they both have the necessary elements of the proposal. In reading through them, Sean did a more deep dive and detailed study than I did, but I agree with his recommendation, which is to engage Strand. It's not the lower cost of the proposals, but we did think that they had a pretty holistic understanding of the necessary scope of the project and an appropriate number of hours to deal with it. I mean, the cost is one thing, but you look at the proposals, they have some different hours embedded into their proposals too. And so, I would fully understand if at the city level, there's a different impression, but that's our recommendation. So with that introduction, I don't know, Sean, if you have anything to add or that I missed or should be clarified that I just said wrong.
No, I think you covered that well. The only thing I would add is that we did send out we sent out 4 RFPs. 2 of the firms contacted, one firm did not have the staff time to engage something like that. The other firm, after looking at the scope of work, were reluctant to submit a proposal. So I do appreciate MSA and Strand both taking the time. There is a cost with them, to put a proposal together. So I do appreciate both of them doing that. And they both have a good understanding that this is a project with a lot of small moving parts that move into bigger moving parts. It's a bit complicated, so I appreciate them doing that for us.
Yeah, that's a good point. Thanks, Sean.
In the Strand package, I'm looking at, where's the final dollar amount for the Allen Boulevard Century?
Let me,
I mean, I see the MSA is like $20,000 or something.
yeah, let me skip down to the Strand one.
It's the very last page, right, where they.
Yeah,
give the
yeah.
Totals.
Last page, there's a lot of numbers on.
Yeah, it's page 9.
Okay, explain that page.
Yeah, so if you add this all up, assuming we get to the part of needing to do preliminary design of the Lake Street traffic signal, it's 137,700.
So it's 137,000 and MSA
We scroll up.
is.
There's had a lot more, I would say, what ifs and add on.
20,000, wait,
Uh,
what am I looking at?
so they have basically 70 and
Okay, 70,000.
21 to get to a comparable scope.
70,000 versus.
And that's if they have the same understanding. That's always a little bit hard to tell on something. But I think they're.
One thing to point out is that Strand has in their proposal an additional 250 hours within theirs. So the dollar to dollar, when this was broke down, overall it was pretty close, but we felt that Strand had a slightly better grasp of what the project scope would be, and their hours may be more accurate. But there is a 250-hour difference between the two proposals.
Okay,
Sure, yeah, so I think it was what, 550 hours instead of 800 or something.
Yeah, it was right around 250. It's not exactly 250, but
so their hourly rates are comparable, it's just that
Yeah,
this
mm,
scope of this project just has more hours. right?
one company thought it would take more staff time to get from here to
Okay.
there than the other one did.
And when does it not take more staff time in these kind of projects?
Well, there's a lot.
Just it, that's why.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's.
I
why
mean,
think
I
the Strand
would
proposal
rather.
Covers that time and.
For realistic dollar amounts, you know, I mean, I don't want to
Yeah.
be sold on, ooh, save money.
It's, first of all, it's not a bid, it's a QBS selection, quality-based selection. Hopefully,
Well, we try to do that internally as staff, and I know
Yeah.
we have the impression that we're just looking at cost, but we're not.
yeah, and therefore, and I think having a better grasp of the actual hours that it takes is by far a better approach, because ultimately MSA is going to get to that number.
Yeah, we'll just have to
Because,
vote on
oops,
it.
we didn't include that, that type of approach, and it just, yeah.
Sean, does the staff put together their own estimate prior to receiving the proposals?
We don't have the expertise on something like this. We would be very, very bad at this. To try to figure out how many hours on each of these tasks is the right number, quote, unquote, number.
So you going into it, you had no idea what it would be for the number of hours?
You know,
Okay,
frankly, I'm a little surprised someone can do it at 800 hours, but maybe if they do it enough, they're good at it.
okay. Just
Yeah.
curious.
And I'm not here to say the other company, MSA can't do it at 500 50 hours. I'm not here to say that. But
Yes, it just, I mean, you look at that whole intersection and you scratch your head. What, how, when,
it can take a lot.
yeah.
Yeah.
When Sean and I put the RFP together, we sit down and discuss each intersection, what is the obvious things that are gonna happen, but then we try to go through and figure out if our traffic study on Lake Street turns out to this, how does it affect this? And if you know, what the turning lane is this wide, so we try to look at the entire thing, and we quickly realize that there's a lot of moving parts to this. And when I looked at the hours, with the different, with the project engineer, with surveying and things like that, I was rather surprised at 800 hours. I thought it would have been closer to 1,000 hours, but
Alder Haniro has her hand raised.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask a question about the pedestrian crossings. I'm looking at both of the proposals, and it seems like there was no request to ask them to look at a north-south crossing on the east side of Allen Boulevard to accommodate the Middleton Shores apartments. There's going to be there may be a new 7-story building planned for that site, and I'm just wondering why not ask about the feasibility of putting in a crossing on the east side of Allen Boulevard?
So this, I don't know if there's a better diagram in here than this one or not, but I think what you're asking is, well, why don't we also put in a crosswalk here, or maybe preferentially put in a crosswalk here? Unfortunately, this is cut off. So number one, I'm not sure if there's a median refuge island with that left turn coming westbound. But there's also a lot more traffic on the east side of this road than on the west side of this road. So we can certainly ask them if that's feasible or doable. But I don't remember, Sean, if there was anything that outright discounted that from being a possibility.
I don't recall there being anything that outright we determined that it couldn't happen. But the other thing is, when the two firms that submitted looked at this, they did not put that in as an option. So it may be that they both looked at it and saw that it wasn't feasible, but that's definitely a conversation we can have at the kickoff meeting.
Yeah, I would suggest to the committee that that's definitely worth looking at, because if you imagine people moving into this new 7-story building, they would have to cross, and cross 3 times if they want to get to Midtown Pub or Harbor Athletic, or, you know, walk down to Marshall Park. And that just doesn't seem very pedestrian friendly.
Yeah, the other potential option is if something like that would not be feasible at the intersection in 2029, when we do Century Avenue, we may be able to look down further to the east and have some type of a walk. I'm not sure, but we can definitely ask them about that.
Well, and I know further east at Dewey Court and Marina Drive, there's been interest for years, and I again recently touched base with the county about that, and they said they're not opposed to it, but it would need like a pedestrian signal there. That it's too close for something like an RRFB, and it's too busy for something that's just like, you know, striping or warning signs, that it would need something substantial before they would allow that.
Yeah, that's why this intersection would be an ideal point, because the signals are there.
Right. Yeah.
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 And at certain times of day, again, I get it, that somebody just wants to cross the road, and if they look both ways and are capable, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
By setting up a crosswalk, we're saying, well, even those with some degree of limited mobility also can cross the street there.
I think the other things that just in the past, other committees, commissions and staff, looking at the overall bicycle transit that is along that whole corridor. How do you get it connected back up to the bike path that will then continue east out towards?
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, it's kind of a bigger picture thing.
Yep. Yeah.
I ride that route that's regularly, and so just speaking strictly organically, like when it's just, I mean, in my head and we're just riding along. I cross at Marina and Dewey.
Yeah.
However, sometimes another bicyclist I'm with is like, no, Dave, you're like being and let's go up to the intersection of Highland and Baskerville. And I'm like, no, I want to be on the bike route as soon as possible.
Path.
So why don't I
Yeah.
just like shoot across the road,
Well, and I think people know their capabilities.
Right, exactly.
the median we have there that on Century Avenue is pretty thin.
East side, I thought too, it's probably not 6 feet.
Yeah, the east side is pretty thin. Doesn't look like 6 feet on street view, and the west side is like maybe 2 feet.
Yeah, see, there's no left
Yeah,
that we have to worry about there, but the east leg is awful busy. So anyway, I think that's good, and we can check. There might be a good reason why that's not safe or desirable. That doesn't mean we can't ask.
yeah.
I think that would be good. So you need a motion for who we would like to recommend?
Yeah, this would be a motion to the Finance and Personnel Committee and to the Common Council to hire a design and and partial bid services for this multi-piece project.
I'll move for Strand.
I'll second.
Finance and Personnel and Council or preliminary, no. Study and partial bid. Is that correct?
Okay. Oh, yeah, so it's for a feasibility study at Lake Street and preliminary design if warranted. If it's not warranted,
Right,
don't move forward. And then design and bidding for the other two intersections, which are Century and Allen and
Yep.
Century at Q.
okay, just like you said.
And that'll all be contingent on city attorney satisfaction with the agreement form, which is gonna follow our template, but it not yet written.
Okay, so attorney also gets involved in this too.
Yep.
Okay,
All right, I will second that motion.
yeah, that's a long motion that he wrote.
Yeah.
It's all on video.
Yeah.
And recorded.
Yes. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
All opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it, motion carries. We have now been meeting for an hour and 13 minutes.
That's a long time for us old guys.
So I
But just the old guys.
as one of the young guys as well, who this applies to, I would move that we have a 5-minute recess for members to take care of needs that they may have.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none, we are in recess until 7:49 PM.
And thanks, Sean. I think you're set, right? Can't hear so good. I think it's because you're muted, though.
Are we gonna talk about the RFP? I didn't know if I should stick around
Oh.
for that.
We are gonna, yep.
Yeah, so I'll stick around for
Otherwise, I
that.
can just tell you tomorrow, where we land on that.
Okay, yeah. Either or, I'm fine either or, but if you got it, then I'm
Then
good.
I'll leave it up to you, man.
All right, I'll take a little bit of my evening then.
Okay. We unmute. Sorry about that, Charles, if you want to say that again.
All right, the time is now 7:49. The recess that we entered into at 7:44 PM is now over. We have Brandon Lang, we have Alder members, and we have Don and myself. So we have a quorum present. The Public Works Committee is back in our noticed meeting. And the item for consideration is agenda item number 8, rectangular rapid flashing beacon, location installation and policy. So Sean, you'd written up a little bit of the draft for policy issues. So if you could start walking us through there.
Well, I was hoping if we take the easier one first, or what I hope will be the easier one first, if anyone's got an idea for a suggested location, we do already have a budget in 2024 to buy something and put it in. But we don't want to buy anything until we know where it's going, because we need the right kind of equipment for the location.
Gaylord.
That is a suggestion in the agenda.
Yes, yes.
It's the one idea that I've heard.
That is-
Number one seems to already have data support.
Oh, God,
But I think it also has neighborhood support.
Yeah,
And we have a member of the public here who expressed interest in this agenda item. So Alder Hanairo, if you would like to speak.
Sure. Well, again, I'll just say that as someone who crosses this particular intersection quite a lot with 2 dogs, it's, you know, it's very difficult when you have a strong-willed dog and you start to cross and a car is coming up the hill or it's coming around the curve to the south. It's just the type of intersection where the visibility is not terrific. And you have people speeding up and down both directions on Pheasant Branch. And as Don indicated, the Conservancy is getting so busy that people, if you go driving down Pheasant Branch Road on a sunny day in summertime or on a weekend, you'll see cars are parked up and down the street, and it reaches the point where they start parking on Gaylord Nelson or sadly in the alley. And so this would have benefits beyond the local area, you know, the residents of Middleton Hills and my neighborhood and further south. I think it would have benefits for everybody who visits the Conservancy because there'd be a much safer way to pass.
All right, so I think we've discussed this. We have a lot of neighborhood support for it.
so I'll move for that location. As one of the 2, we have 2?
Nope,
Just one?
That's the only one I know of.
Okay,
So, yeah, and this is a recommendation to the Common Council.
Common Council, okay,
And then they'll tell staff, yeah, go ahead and do it.
okay. I'll move, we recommend this location to the Common Council.
Yeah,
Gaylord Nelson and Pheasant Branch.
Thanks, Kim.
Is she second?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right. We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Now on to the policy discussion.
Yeah, so step one, and maybe as a preface, this is an idea I brought to the committee previously, but many of us weren't on the committee at the time. I didn't get encouragement to move forward with trying to develop any sort of measurable criterion that would be cutoffs for where we put RFPs, and if we have multiple requests, how do we prioritize them? I think it was very early in our RFP experience, and that might have been part of the reasoning of like, we'll just sort of find our way through this. We have enough of them now that I wanted to revisit this as to whether we want to develop a policy, and if so, what sort of measurable criteria we would want to include. And so I found a little bit of information from WISDOT, which is at a little bit of a different scale than the city of Middleton. And so part of their, traffic operations manual has some guidance in it. I think we could get guidance from like City of Madison.
Yeah, I was
although
gonna
they're
say.
A little bit of a different scale
Yeah.
than us. So I sort of first wanted to figure out, does the committee want to develop a policy or still just sort of field requests as they come in and budget for them as we feel, yeah, this is a good spot or not a good spot. Right now, I don't say yes or no to anything or which one seems more important. Because I don't have anything to lean on to do that.
Yeah, it's in a tough spot because sometimes, all you need is some residents and an alder, or two to say, yeah, hey, this is a good idea, let's get behind it. But then if you have a policy in place and it's like, well, it's gotta be these numbers. Then we look at the policy and you're like, it's a policy that doesn't become an ordinance, it's just a policy, it's just a working guide document, right? How do policies apply versus ordinances?
Right. Well,
Yeah.
right now, I mean, it's a budgeting consideration, so I could put 15 intersections out there and the council tells me yes or no to any one or all 15 of them. It's not that the system doesn't work. It's that when I field those calls, I don't have anything to tell the caller other than, hey,
Yeah.
put it on the list.
Yeah,
Yeah, hearing.
I think having some set of criteria that we consider would be helpful. Would probably also be helpful for us to refer this to Ped Bike and Transit as well for their thoughts.
Ooh, that would be good. Can we refer it to them?
Sure.
I mean, they're the ones that would be intimately involved. We're granted crossing our roads, but.
Yeah.
That's for the purposes of pedestrian and.
Pedestrian and bikes, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we should probably refer this to Ped Bike and Transit and they'll give us their input and then we can revisit it and move forward.
Need a motion for that, Sean?
Yeah.
I'll move it. So move. We give this to Ped Bike.
I'll second that motion. Is there any other discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of referring this over to Ped Bike and Transit, please say aye.
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 All opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it. And so we move on to our next item on the agenda, which is the Water Utility Consumer Confidence Report. Mike, I see you here. It's your report memo. If you wouldn't mind unmuting and walking us all through.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
your internet's a little laggy, Mike, so if you can hear me,
Got technology.
you're moving like Mr. Roboto.
And no sound.
I don't think the ordinance requires him to have video, so maybe turning off your video like you've done, Mike.
He could dial in on
Yeah.
voice with his phone. If he wanted. Then leave his video, his mute on and video on. We'd see his face. And have audio.
Yeah, the audio's still not coming through, Mike.
You might see him dial in. I recommend you do that and it'll just work. Use his phone.
Yeah, I don't know if you can hear us, Mike.
Oh, yeah.
But if you could just dial in on your phone, we might be able to hear you.
Probably looking for the phone. Which is at the top of the agenda.
No way, he's an emergency responder. He's always got a phone.
Oh. Maybe he's responding to an emergency.
Yeah, that's it. That's the excuse.
All right, do we want to have a brief?
Oh,
Oh, there we
dialing
go.
in.
Connecting.
There it is, okay. There we go.
Okay, his dial-in is still on mute though.
There we go.
No,
No,
Nope, Mike, we're still not getting
No
audio from you.
dice. Yeah, it seems like your phone connected with video only.
no, still nothing.
Heck.
I really recommend you just dial in on a landline, use your mobile phone, dial the phone number.
I think that is his mobile phone.
Yeah.
No, but he's still doing it over internet IP connection. If he just does a traditional dial-in right over cellular service.
Yeah.
For voice only, just make a phone
Yeah.
call,
Oh,
dial into Zoom. And we can hear his voice. I mean, we don't have to see him,
Yeah,
you should have seen me turn this computer on tonight. It took 20 minutes.
so. And that'll work. Thanks.
well, while Mike sorts out his, well,
Everybody,
there you go.
I am so sorry. I don't even have any kids home to be sucking off my Wi-Fi. I'm home all alone. So,
They're all on Fortnite.
oh, this is crazy. I deeply apologize. Trust me. And of course, now I'm working off of my phone, so everything's pretty small. And let's get right to it, right? So this is my first Middleton Annual Water Quality Report, CCR, mandated by the DNR. I basically used the same format that the city had been using previously. I doctored some things up, added some notes. It's pretty clean and clear. The DNR has signed off on this and said that it meets their approval and their requirements. We are running it, through Public Works Committee for recommendation of publishing to push out to the public as well as put on the website. As you can tell, there's a lot there to go through. I'm not sure what you exactly want to go through. I don't know if people have questions directly. I started last July, so there were some things that took place that I was unaware of at the time, and that being stated actually towards the end of the report, where a couple of samples were missed. One was missed by us, just with the whole changeover of management positions and new people coming in. Unsure exactly how things had worked. It just got missed, and then another sample was missed due to our lab that we send our samples to. They have the same list that we have, and they just failed to send us the sample kit, and we failed to check them. That's all been figured out now. We know what we're looking at, what we need to monitor, what samples need to be done, so we can cross-reference our lab to make sure that they're getting us what we need as well. And that is noted at like I say, at the end, with the actions taken.
Yeah, although, and Mike didn't say this part, but there was a lot of turnover in the water utility. And that he managed to hold it together at all is its own tiny miracle. And so I want to acknowledge that too.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. You lost half of your water utility and, probably 60 years plus of experience. So you have some experience that came up and filled those spots. I had been in the water utility previously with Middleton for over 10 years, and I had left to go pursue something else. I'm happy to be back, and I had that background. I'm learning every day, just as every day there's something new, and it's always been like that in the water utility. Nothing is ever the same. Every water main break is special. It's never, we're learning all the time, and you have a brand new crew with guys that have less than a year of experience, and we're talking 4 guys. So our three managers or two foreman and assistant foreman, and then Brad, who has many years of experience, crewman. Those three guys are training 4 brand new guys, you know, every day, working with them and trying to get our agenda done. And we all know, as Sean has stated multiple times in this meeting, how backlogged and busy we are. And that is the truth.
Anyway, you know, little things, but nothing missed, nothing major, nothing bad. And that's a pretty huge win.
I didn't see any yeses in the violations, so that's a good.
Yeah, not in jail.
Anytime you see that, you go, oh, that's good.
Yeah.
We're drinking good water.
Oil notices.
Yeah, yeah.
This is bad.
Like Atlanta.
Yeah. Yeah. Right on that.
We-
Nice.
We assisted with Westport's issue. If you were all aware of their major issue that they had, it was about a month and a half ago now, where they had to issue a boil water alert because a construction outfit had shut a main valve. We here at Middleton do not allow our main valves to be touched by any construction outfit. We handle that for the exact reason of what happened with Westport. To eliminate any sort of issue like that where we would have to do a boil water alert. We absolutely do not want that. Nobody wants that, but just so everybody's aware, we're kind of already ahead of that, where we do not allow people to touch our water main valves to cause an issue like that.
Yeah.
So we need a motion to go ahead and allow this to be posted.
To approve the report and direct its posting. Yep.
I will move to approve the report and direct its posting.
Orman will second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, hearing none, motion carries. Next item, resolution 2020.
Keep up the good work, Mike.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. It's an uphill battle, but we're winning every.
Resolution 2024 through 27. Approving sewer utility 2023 compliance maintenance annual report SU 165. And Mike, this one's you again.
Yes, thank you again, and glad to be here. This is an annual report, basically the DNR checking up on what we're doing for maintenance in the city, the system itself. If you take a look at the grade, we scored an A. You know, we're doing everything that we should be doing. There's always room for improvement with everything, right? But the main, you know, the main thing is that we're doing a good job and we're doing what's recommended, and we're going to keep doing that.
Yeah, it looks like you got a perfect score. Congratulations. That's really incredible.
And that goes to the crew, right? They're the guys that are dealing with stuff. I just get to fill up the report with all the information. So.
Right. Well, and in the grand sense, this is an annual review and update to say, are you actually following your plan? Because so many plans sit on a shelf someplace, and this is the DNR's way of saying, don't do that. Let's make sure you're actually doing this stuff. So it's not unusual that we get a good grade on this, because that just shows we're doing what we said we would be doing, you know.
Does this one take city council approval? I see the mayor signs it.
It does, because it requires a resolution.
Okay.
Yeah, so we would typically just recommend council adoption of the resolution to approve the report.
I'll move we recommend council accept or adopt
The resolution.
resolution, yes,
To
to
approve the
resolution,
report.
yeah.
Yep.
Orman will second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, hearing none. All right, motion carries. Mike, thank you, and thank you to all the water utility staff.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. And again, I am deeply sorry about the technical issues, and I appreciate your time because you guys are all there too, you know, doing your job. So. appreciate it.
Well, you probably missed the part where I said it took me 20 minutes to turn this computer on tonight. Yikes.
I timed in right at 6:30, so I probably did miss that. So, but all right, thank you, everybody.
Yeah. Have a good evening.
You as well.
Okay,
So, tactical urbanism is on our agenda.
tactical urbanism's on our agenda. So, the reason I suggested adding this to the agenda is because Ped Bike and Transit met in May, and they had a discussion about making a budget request for a tactical urbanism study. It sounded like they were discussing potentially the area near the Costco parking lot and potentially the entrance to the Goodwill on Century Avenue. Where
We did that.
yeah, that
We did that bike
cross
infrastructure ride.
yeah, crossing that can be a bit challenging. And they weren't they did not make a specific request yet, but I did think that since it was fairly likely that they were going to make a request based on the discussion in their meeting, that we should probably start the conversation here in this committee, since it's something that would likely come out of Public Works budget and involve Public Works staff time. And since it's in our comprehensive plan already as something that we should look to do, it made sense to have a discussion about policy as well. Based on conversations I've had with plan department staff, they are very in favor of including these in the neighborhood traffic management plan process. And when we have a long list of potential things we might consider for traffic calming, that might make sense. Obviously not with the speed humps, because at the cost we may as well just put the speed humps in. But there are probably a few things where it might make sense to do that. So I wanted to get the conversation started both on budget and policy, and that's why I asked to include this on the agenda.
So I had to look it up just to confirm that it was what I thought it was. So
It's different things to different people, so you're not
Yeah.
wrong.
Yeah.
but I guess it's, well, here, I'll just throw another term out there. It's kind of like a popular term I hear right now in work environment. It's where it's lead from where you are. Typically management training and whatnot was always, kind of from the type A alpha position. I manage, you follow. Where tactical urbanism is, hey, I happen to be a bicycle enthusiast and I see a problem. I'm gonna get a bunch of my local bicyclists together and we're gonna point this problem out because we found a bad intersection. Done. Now, so I guess there's a lot of labels to it. We can call it what we want. We have that in place with our neighborhood initiatives for traffic calming and traffic management. I think. So this is a Gen Z term that is now coming into our existence in city management, planning and development. That's my take on it. Which
I've gone ahead and highlighted on the screen at least the definition included in the city's comprehensive plan,
yes,
which and the way it was explained to me, this is a little bit more of grassroots, low investment of time, low investment of infrastructure, sort of try it before you buy it kind of thing. And so we've only done one thing this way, and I would not say that it went well because we had no roadmap. We had no idea what we were doing. And so I think slings and arrows came from all directions. You know, that was the temporary traffic circle at the intersection of Elmwood Avenue and Middleton Street downtown.
Yeah,
Um,
it was too big.
there was very little guidance. It was just, hey, let's just go do something. And, you know,
Yeah, but you tried.
I think the trade-off with being nimble was that there was sort of no program that says, here's what we're doing and why we're doing it and the problem it'll address and what sort of data we're going to collect before and after and how we're going to communicate that to the neighborhood and to what degree will involve the neighborhood. None of that was known. You know, so rolling it into something like the neighborhood traffic management program, I think has some merit. The thing that it would sacrifice is it would no longer be nimble.
Yeah.
And then I think that would be seen as its downside, because then it's no longer a low cost, try it before you buy it. It's a like, let's get invested and then do this.
And it was part of the problem there that people just weren't informed as to what you were doing and why you were doing it. And-
For sure, there was a
and-
lot of that.
And I remember those discussions and we threw it out in this committee, well, let's try one someplace. And that's where it ended up. And maybe just part of, if there was a policy discussion, it's just keep the neighborhoods or the people informed where this is gonna go. And I don't think that relates to benches. And at Costco or benches or whatever you're thinking about at Goodwill, but
That's just what the discussion.
yeah, I know, but I mean, something as radical as that, definitely, I think is more information has to go out. It's like when we talk about the speed bumps, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
The neighborhood has to vote on it before it can go in.
That's part of the process.
Not to bring up the urban art piece, but we made the mistake of letting people comment on it before it went in, and that killed it. Rather than just doing it. So there's that alternate approach too. That, well, maybe they don't need to know until after the fact, and then we'll take the slings, the arrows, which you did. Apparently.
Well, and this was a little bit different than the NTMP too, in that the neighbors were physically doing the work, which also made me shudder a little bit. But it wasn't really routed through public works or engineering. It was sort of just done. But I'm not really thrilled with having people working in the street,
Citizens, yeah.
sort of with the city looking the other way. Because what if somebody gets hurt
Yeah, they got the
working in an
sweatshirt
intersection?
I think to that end, I like where you're taking it because, you know, and I just looked at the internet version of it. It is something that is first identified as coming from the public constituents, call it, starts with them, not with us, not with the city, not with, and then could evolve into, I think what we see here, as a definition, it could become street pavement treatments, or it could be landscape or art. I actually think that part of that missing, that paragraph needs to maybe qualify it of where it evolves from. Would help guide it. And then to that end, you know, I don't want to say a hard stop, but a stop that says, well, okay, now you're getting into infrastructure. Now you are talking about, you know, as a grassroots group of people, you're saying, well, we'll take this on, but it involves us working in the streets. Well, wait a second. Okay, let's slow down there.
Yeah.
And so maybe start there with some guidelines and say, if this project is going to involve modifying, changing, you know, a street, pedestrian way, surface way, movement, vehicle movement, something. Okay, the urban technical brought it to us, but now we have to start following the rules that are there, as opposed to a community group saying, well, there's a vacant piece of property, it needs to be cleaned up. Just cleaned up, and maybe opportunity to do some native planting, some species. Maybe there's some opportunity for some art, maybe not. Okay, send that over to the Arts Commission or you know, where it could have a sense of a little bit more, yeah, that's a really nice idea. Let's just get you right over to Parks and Rec or Forestry, city staff, not committee commission, and talk to them about it, because yeah, there might be something good there.
Well, that's a good point too. There is no necessarily one good designated home for this. You know, some of it may come one way and some of it may go in an entirely different
Yeah, I mean,
direction.
you've got a square of property, it's just called blighted or whatever. You know,
Yeah.
people who wanna just clean it up and make something of it.
Maybe what we do is we send this to Head Bike and Transit for them to flesh out their policy ideas a little bit more, not on specific projects, but on what they're looking at,
Parks maybe too?
parks, and then we also send it to Plan Commission. Because I think it's gonna end up, it may end up involving them, and they put it into the comprehensive plan, so.
Yeah, I mean, if, for example, you have friends of Pheasant Branch who donate endless amounts of labor and time and material. And they're out there just working in a well-organized way, accomplishing an awful lot. And not every single bit of it comes before a committee commission and says, well, you know, in this section, we're gonna do this, and that section, we're gonna do that. They do work, and they do great work. But so maybe there could be something, just some loose language where if an inquiry comes in from a group of people, let's say we live in a XYZ neighborhood and we've got a little piece of property that's blighted and we want to clean it up. Now the city staff can go, yeah, why don't you can do this within guidelines.
And it's the guidelines part, right?
Yeah.
To say, I mean, from two perspectives. One, what is staff's understanding of what this means?
Yeah, exactly.
And then what is the citizen group petitioner's perspective of what this means?
Yeah.
Because we don't have a flow chart that says, here's our common understanding.
That's right.
And even as staff, I may not know, is this something we can just let you do? Or is this something that needs some committee approval? Or does it need council approval?
There's liability issues.
There
I mean, you've got
liability
some
issues,
you're talking about, let's clean up an area. Well, if it's city property and yeah, go ahead. And they're out there with their chainsaws.
Hey, let's remove this green box over here.
Yeah, right. And all.
do have a volunteer process.
Yeah, right. I mean, and hold harmless agreements have to be in
Yeah.
place. And so there's the legality of some of this too that has to be watched.
We haven't
Like
yet
when they're
extended
putting in the
that
street.
to working in a road,
Yeah, doing a circle in a road. Yeah, there better be.
because that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think we should really send this to first to the committee that is looking at making the budget request, to have them flesh out more of what criteria they're using and what exactly they mean. And then we should send it over to other committees that we think might might have an idea, and then we can evaluate where we are and potentially include some budget for it if they get back to us in a timely way. Just have criteria that we can.
Yeah, I mean, because
Get
it
behind.
crosses everything. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Taking up an old apartment complex somewhere in the city. And just the surrounding area is looking a little tired. And people, neighbors in the neighborhood want to simply get together and clean things up and
paint a mural on the side of a building.
Exactly.
Well, then you gotta also get that property owner involved
Yes.
too.
That's
Well,
right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And
This
if
is-
it's
this is
like
where
the
all of
Lux
these things kind of
downtown owned by
dovetail
some
into the
national.
project.
Yeah,
Right, and how are we looking at this idea of tactical urbanism in a
Yeah.
way that it is kind of incorporated in these larger projects, not necessarily just a thing in and of itself.
Yeah,
Yeah, because, you know, those residents of a neighborhood, they might end up coming to the city at some point and saying, we want this
Yeah.
property owner to really do something, and we're willing to do the work. We're the ones who are willing to help them clean up around the building and
there
plant
are city
greenery. and-
ordinances for things like that, though. There are city ordinances for things. People's homes get out of hand, the city can't come in and say, fix it,
But
you know.
neighborhood volunteers might be able to do it.
Yeah.
Because the person can't afford to do it.
Yeah.
And so, you know, this is another one of those measures where it's people in a neighborhood taking things, taking on responsibility themselves to help each other and help their neighbors.
Sure.
And they might just give a nod to the city and say, hey, you know, this is what we're doing out here. And this is why we're doing it.
Mm.
And the city might say, well, this is great. We appreciate your initiative. And maybe the city is even willing to then step in and help them.
Well, and some of it's pretty straightforward. So for instance, we don't allow people to do work but we do allow people to do work in like a median island, right, at a cul-de-sac, out in the middle of a really quiet cul-de-sac, and there's grass or trees, and somebody says, I'd like to put a flower bed. Like, that's cool. We have a form for that.
Oh,
You know,
Well,
and
VFW puts up flags
yeah,
in the
exactly.
middle of a boulevard.
Exactly.
Ellen.
Well, and they're starting to move them away from boulevards.
Wow.
I just had a little correspondence with John about that, to move them more towards like terrace areas instead of medians. But it's that kind of thing,
Yeah.
to say, okay, you know, as long as we're playing by the same rules, don't worry about it, right? But it's the more nuanced thing.
Yeah.
Where somebody says, let's put some artwork, let's paint, for instance, temporarily, just put some artwork on a street. Well, what does that mean?
Yeah, they tried that on State Street.
so
Yeah.
Charles, I would, just, I guess one of my inputs would be, because I've done this on other
yeah,
committees and commissions that I'm on now, looking at the city comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
Is, like, I'm fine with the concept of it, but maybe we just adjust that language to be more reflective and kind of move forward at that point. Because what I don't see in that term is that this is grassroots, this is coming from the public to the city, bringing it to the city, and I don't see that in that language in this comprehensive statement.
yeah, we could refer that as well to the plan commission, I think.
Oh, or, okay,
Yeah. So I think maybe we refer this both to plan, parks, and ped bike transit for their thoughts. And
and I would say, arts,
arts as well. Yeah, you're right.
yep. I mean, they came up with the art themes for the bus enclosures, bus stops.
Oh, sure.
And so I think they take a look at elements of beautification.
Yeah, so I think let's just read through the list of committees and
Oh.
determine whether we want to.
License and ordinance.
Yeah. Airport Commission, yes or no?
Yeah.
No. Arts Committee,
Yes.
Yes.
yes. Board of Review, no.
No.
Building Committee,
No.
no. Commission on Aging,
No.
No.
Commission on Youth,
No.
CDA.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's a harder call.
Boy, they have a big,
I don't know, they haven't typically gotten into this kind of thing that I
they don't get this granular. They're a
Gotcha.
big picture.
They're big picture.
feel like
Okay.
it.
All right,
Let's say no then.
no,
Conservancy Lands Committee.
Yes.
yeah,
All right, so CLC. EMS Commission,
no,
Emergency Preparedness Committee. No on the Ethics Board.
Nope.
Finance and Personnel.
Nope.
Fire Commission,
Oh,
Landmarks Commission.
Maybe, yes,
Sure.
yeah, let's throw it in there.
Yeah,
I don't know, they're just landmarks.
Yeah,
they're landmarks.
But people, citizens could say, hey, we need a landmark here. This is a historic.
It might be such a rare thing, though. I don't know that I've
Yeah.
ever heard a person
No.
come in and say,
Yeah.
hey.
I would probably leave it off of landmarks.
No,
Like unless an idea would directly affect a landmark or a landmark area, then I don't think and that would be a very specific.
Yeah. Library Board,
You know,
LNO.
I was just kidding about that.
Please no.
I wasn't kidding about getting through. Middleton Westport Joint Zoning Committee, no. Parks, Rec, Forestry, that's already on the list. Ped Bike Transit on the list. Plan Commission on the list. Pleasant View Golf Course Advisory Committee, no. Police Commission, no. Public Lands Endowment Fund Committee, no.
yeah.
Public Safety Committee.
I guess it depends if some of these tactical urban ideas are meant to be traffic calming or another way, like pedestrian friendly. If they're going to Ped Bike Transit, they may need to go there to public safety as well. But again, is that more of a specific, like we have a specific idea that needs to go, or do they need to?
It's a not at this time committee.
I think you're right on
We usually,
public safety.
like before I would implement any sort of traffic calming thing, I give the emergency service providers, that's part of our NTMP process. To
Yeah.
say, let's get their input before we do anything.
Sure.
But they don't drive the policy. They just give input on like, that's gonna be a problem in this spot, or go ahead.
So not at this time, but maybe in the future.
I doubt if they would provide any input for a policy.
Okay.
They would say, we just want to be informed if anything does involve.
Don't slow us down too much.
Yeah. Slow that ambulance down with your flower pots and.
Stormwater Utility Board,
Yeah.
no. Sustainability Committee,
No.
I'd say probably not.
to number 5, Joint Review Board, no. Tourism Commission,
No.
no. Water Resource Management Commission, no. Workforce Housing Committee. ZBA. No.
They have.
Zoning Board of.
By the way, from SWUB standpoint, if we had a group of people that came in and wanted to clear the undergrowth in a storm drainage facility.
Oh, yeah.
So SWUB in that regard, maybe, but Parks usually takes care of that.
Isn't that part of the Adopt a Storm Drain program that we have?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think we already,
so let's not include.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll just hand them some loppers and say, go for it.
And waiters. Get down in there.
Mostly lobbers, yeah, don't disturb the turtle.
Okay, so Sean, you have our list of committees that we're referring this to.
I wrote down Art, CLC, Parks, Plan, PBTC. And what is it we're asking them to do specifically? 'Cause otherwise they'll ask me.
We're asking them for comments on developing guidelines for tactical urbanism projects.
Guidelines for tactical urbanism.
Yes.
So it's down there coming.
Projects or policy document?
Or policy document, yeah, policy document, yeah.
So developing a policy program.
Highlights.
Yeah.
It's not okay to run with scissors
For tactical.
in the street.
Or lobbers for them.
Not allowed.
Definitely not loppers.
Not okay to run with loppers.
So we're just asking them for their input on us correcting. See, so we're asking them to provide to us any comments of what they would like to see in the
Yeah.
development of a policy program for tactical urbanism.
So we can develop a budget.
Yeah. Yeah, because we can't develop a budget without knowing what we're budgeting.
Or even what it is, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Still struggling with that. Maybe a little of my life.
We're both older, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'll just struggle with it.
There's
All right,
there's politicians
so,
that don't think we should vote.
We have a motion and a list of committees. Do we have a second?
Did we have a person make the motion?
That-
I'll make the motion.
Okay,
All right.
I'll second it.
Chair shouldn't be making motions.
I'm
Almost everybody's just mute.
I'm okay with motions by committee, but I need to.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second.
Who seconded? Did
You did. Seconded. Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
I,
Aye. All opposed? Hearing none. We are on to agenda item number 12, which is future topics, future meeting agenda items. No discussion or action. Brendan, do you have any?
I do not, thank you.
Kim, do you have any?
I do not.
None.
None.
Just my discussions with you on yours, because I know you have one.
Yes.
Didn't get on this agenda.
That didn't get on this agenda.
So
Okay,
otherwise I have none.
all right, for that particular one, it's discussion of reports from committee liaisons. What we'd like to see, when we might want them, what they might consist of.
Sure.
Okay.
Talk about that in the meeting.
Yeah.
Future meeting.
So you'll make it a small agenda then short, really short next.
Yeah, it sounds like people won't be here. Oh, wait, no, that's July 8th. So,
Yeah, we'll be here.
July 20th, yeah.
that's right.
All right.
Oh, sorry. No.
No,
I'm
it's
looking at
the date of our next meeting is
Yeah.
the 24th of June.
24th of June, yeah.
Okay, I don't have any besides that, so we have reached the end of our noticed agenda. The meeting is adjourned.
Almost a record, eh? No.
Have a good night, Brandon.
Already 35 minutes. Or 2 hours.
Thanks, guys, good night.
Good night, Brandon.
Good night, Brandon.